Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jenna Quinn, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chat Series. And just so everyone is aware, this session is recorded. So really what that means for you is that it's going to be available to you on demand on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. So feel free to watch it again, share it with a friend or a colleague or anyone else who you might think would get something good out of this. And so with that, I am very happy to introduce our speaker today, Adrian Noack. Welcome, Adrian.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. I'm excited to get into our chat today.
Me too.
So yeah. So let me read your bio really quick to give folks a quick little primer about you.
Sounds good.
So Adrian is the CEO and managing partner of Midnight Echo Records. He is an active recording drummer, producer, and artist manager, consulting with artists nationally and internationally. He did his undergrad in technical theater at the College of Arts here at CSULB and his Master of Music Business at Berklee College of Music. His other job is managing two 650-seat performing arts venues, at which he has overseen over 2,500 concerts, recitals, musicals, plays, and other live events, which keeps him very busy indeed. Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Well, let's just get right on into it. Let's start off, if you could, with a little bit of background about you yourself and what your life and experiences have been that led you to come to CSULB in the first place.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I grew up in Orange County and was really involved in music and theater all throughout high school. Kind of got sucked into it and never let go. Um, my mom has always been into music. On my dad's side, my uncle was a touring bass player. So the river runs deep for music. When it came time to go to college, I applied to two schools, one of which was Long Beach State, and I actually didn't get in initially.
Oh,
And
plot
so,
twist.
right, yeah. And I was actually slated to go to OCC for 2 years and then transfer. And then I was in 2004, yeah, and then summer 2004. I got a letter from CSULB basically saying like we got additional funding from the state and you've been accepted and hold on to your butts, here we go, and I started my longer stint at Long Beach State. I ended up graduating in 2013, um, uh, through a variety of reasons, but uh, I did theater the entire time that I was there. And it was an incredible experience. And while I was doing theater, I also was playing in bands and seeing live shows and getting to know the artist community in Long Beach and in Orange County. And it's all been sort of like this road started at Long Beach State for me. Like it really did. Like where I am now, if I hadn't gone to Long Beach, I wouldn't be here in any way. Yeah, that's the sort of shortest nutshell that I can compact it into.
No, and I know that there's always a lot, right? Everyone has so much to say about their time at Long Beach State. And,
Mhm.
I mean, let's take a little bit of time to you know, talk about your student experience a little bit
Yeah.
more and what that was like. I know you said that you were getting to know that Long Beach music scene and OC music scene, but were there any, peers you met that really stayed with you, or professors that were particularly impactful? Were you part of student groups? Did you work when you were on campus? What did your student experience look like?
Yeah, you're actually jogging quite a few memories now. So I initially started as wanting to be a music major, but I ended up finding sort of a better fit at the theater department during I think my first or second year. Um, I took I took a theater class. I think it was like for non-majors or something like that. And and I was working in the shop. They were doing tool training, and I grew up around tools and really comfortable around them. And we were using the table saw, and basically one of the shop supervisors, shout out Dan Roghalt and Corey Holst. They were like, "Oh, this guy knows how to use a saw. We got a ringer here, you know." And basically, they offered me a job as a shop assistant, like a student assistant, and got a couple of calls doing that. Um, and I think it was like my second or third year they got a new assistant technical director, Brian Ludmer, who's still a good friend of mine, who actually got me the job where I am now as a as an overhire. Um, so so those guys were incredibly formative in terms of like me getting involved, like welcoming me in and giving me a sort of a place to be. And then Brian and I were good buddies, sort of like the whole time that he and I were there, and have kept in touch. And so I started sort of being a shop assistant, and then like I was like, oh, I've got a good fit here, and then started taking more and more classes. And the first acting class that I was in, which I did terribly at, absolutely like repeat, delete, terribly at. Uh, I met friends that I still keep in touch with, and that sort of like little cohort of people. Um, you know, we've all sort of like gone our different ways and everything, but you know, we'll touch base and be like, oh, hey, how you doing? Like I saw, you know, you had the success over here, and like, hey, you changed, you know, careers, like, you know, anything, you know, that I can help with or whatever. And we all sort of follow each other still. And there's like a picture that we took. Oh God, it was probably 2006. Um, and that group of students, like I could probably tell you where like 80% of them are now. And like, you know, shoot them a text. So it was really cool. And so through that, like we all kind of came up together through the program and, you know, did all of our student showcases and all that kind of thing. And for me personally, it was like the community that I needed because I was commuting too. So like I was driving from Santa Ana to Long Beach almost every day to do classes or to do shows or to do student showcase or to, you know, hang out at a friend's house or whatever. And so yeah, that was a really cool group that I still stay in touch with.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that that's awesome that you were able to continue those relationships and experiences,
Hmm.
you know, throughout your life and hopefully throughout your career.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think that a lot of folks, especially a lot of students who major in either theater or in music, right? Um, and they're trying to figure out how they're gonna navigate and how they're gonna find that, first job.
Hmm.
So I mean, what did your, first position or first job right out of school look like? How did you find that? What were the types of things that you did to be successful in it?
Um, yeah. Let's see, right out of school. So I worked all throughout school. Um, I had to. I took on student loans to go, and so like because I was in the theater program, I got I got jobs. Um, gigging basically like at I think it was Redondo Beach Civic Arts. I would do calls there. I worked a little bit in the shop as well. Um, I think I was working at Disney. Yeah, I worked at Disneyland as a valet runner. I worked at Home Depot. I actually paused college for a hot minute to work at Pacific Symphony
Wow.
down in Orange County. I was their manager of youth ensembles. And I'm trying to lead up to where I what how I got my job right out of college, what that first job was. It was probably, yeah, you know what it was? It was I worked for an events company called McNally Enterprises, and they're in Orange County, and that's where I really cut my teeth into live events. And I got that job because an older student, I think it was a senior buddy, um, and Brian, who was the AT there, ended up going to work there, and they were like, join the team, and I ended up joining them over there, and that pulled me into live events, and that's where I really started getting into like knowing, the management side of things, like production management. And I was also doing a ton of audio live engineering. I was DJing, pretty big private events and like Fashion Week, Orange County, and all that kind of stuff. And that sort of like started the sort of parallel road of like production, live events, and like music, which has always been a through line for me down the way. Uh, and then that basically kept me going, 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 going. And then I took a pause because I wanted to shortly go into law enforcement because live events is not conducive for like retirement. So I was
Sure.
like, I need to look at a retirement. And then didn't end up doing that. And Brian got me the job as an overhire at these two venues that I work at now 10 or 11 years ago. And I kind of worked my way up through that. And while I was doing that, I was still engineering, still playing in bands, sort of giving advice to people that I knew that were sort of like doing music and, how would you handle this, or this person is being sketchy, like how do I deal with that? And, could you sit in on this session or whatever? And sort of did that all the way through, and then yeah, that's how that road got going.
No, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about that road, right? Like you, on one hand, have the live events that you're doing that I'm assuming is that, you know, is that kind of a little bit more stable type of situation.
No.
That's true. Everything's changes
Yeah.
all the time, right?
Yeah.
Every live event is different. Um, but how did you make sure that you were keeping yourself in that musical space, right? Like it's
Yeah.
easy it's easy to get wrapped up in the craziness that is live events or that quote unquote day job. But to stay and stay sticking with music, how have you been able to navigate that journey?
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard because it like doing live events, especially when I was doing it when I left that first company, I was a freelancer, and you're just hustling and hustling and hustling and going from one gig to the next one, and maybe you're sleeping and maybe you're not, and like so finding an outlet musically for that is really difficult. I wherever I went, I always had my drum set with me, and I always set it up, much to the chagrin of my neighbors, I'm sure. But I always let them know like, hey, I'm going to be practicing, so like, give me a call or whatever. Um, the thing that got me or took me sort of like to where I am now with the label is honestly the pandemic was the best thing that could have happened for that. Hate to say it, but I was lucky enough to keep my job, but I wasn't able to go in, and so I spent a lot of time. I The band that I was in recorded an album, and I tracked all the drums in my garage, and sent it out to get mixed. That album is Into the Night by La Roca La Roca. If
I
anybody's
like it. Let's
interested,
plug it. Let's plug it.
right? But it'll kind of give you an idea of what you can do in your garage, and in talking with the band, it was like, well, how are we gonna get it out there, and how are we gonna promote it, and how do we, do this whole thing? And I was like, I don't want to share the money with anybody else. Like, how hard could it be to start a label, and self-release and all that kind of thing? And spoiler alert, really hard to do in a pandemic. No one's gonna sign you. No one's going to tell you that you can tour during a pandemic. Like, I mean, everything was shut down. So we're like, let's just go down this road. And so, sort of accumulated more and more equipment on top of what I had, and then was like, man, I really love this. And as things got weirder at the job where I am, or there was an uncertainty, right? I started leaning more and more into like, I really love doing music. And I've always, when I went to CSULB, my intent was to be a drummer, was to go to school for music. And so I think it's not a 100% not a regret, but like it was always in the back of my head, like, you love doing this. You were going to dedicate, 4 to 7 or 8 years of your life doing this at college, you know, um, you know, give it a good solid try. And, um, I ended up starting the label and, finding partners, and, partners come and go, and it's always evolving. But I've really started leaning more and more into it and allocating more and more of my free time into shifting to that, so that I can do it full time, and be a positive change in the music industry, for artists, especially up and coming ones.
Yeah, that's great. You know, what I know that you've mentioned that, this is kind of like something that you've filled your free time with, almost, essentially, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think a great thing to kind of paint is, what is the reality of a typical day look like for you, juggling both of your positions?
Yeah. It's hard. So, I mean, the reality of the situation is that Midnight Echo Records is still very much a young company, and essentially a startup, right? We started December 2020. That's when we filed our incorporation, or our LLC paperwork. And 2021, like, things are still going on, and like, um, when you start a label and you realize that there are things that you don't know, you you decide to go get a master's in that business, and then and you do that. And for me, so it's balancing that and my job, and trying to figure out how to make the label work. And then uh your idea of what you want to do, and like what your role is in that company, sort of changes all the time, right? Like, I find myself talking to an artist in Seattle about touring internationally, right? I talked to an artist in Mexico who wanted to get a foothold in the market in LA. I will be producing a record with someone, that I'm just engineering and producing, or I'll be playing drums on something for someone remotely, or I'll get a session from back east, and they're like, hey, can you take a listen to this, and let me know, what sort of thing that I'm looking for. Or there's just an artist going like, uh, if I want to collect money from a PRO, like, what's the best way to start doing that? Like, so it's really just what's the need in the moment, and how do you answer that call, kind of thing. And uh you know can you juggle that with your job that really actually pays the bills? And the answer is, it's really, really hard. Today, I'm taking a day so that I can do this, and then sit down and do some more producing in the garage, um and then follow up with an artist that had questions about management, and representation. So um it's a balancing act, and it's not easy, and especially in the music industry, there's a lot of oversaturation. Everybody thinks that they have a solution for something. Um, and so you really have to find your sort of niche market. Where do you fit in? How, what are the problems that you can solve for people? And then sort of plug that hole with the time that you have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you said before, like there are things and goals and missions, right, that you want to try and make better, right? There
Hmm.
are things about the music industry for up and coming artists that you want to make better. What are those things? What are those kind of guideposts for you?
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping, and there's a lot of bad information out there, and there are a lot of people that, um, there's the way that we talk about artists in the music industry is artist exploitation. How do we exploit the artist to make money, essentially? And I hate that phrase, because exploitation is a word that is negative, like you're to take advantage of somebody, and I prefer the word leverage. How do you leverage what the artist has to offer to make them successful? Um, and I want to be, more than anything, a resource for artists who, can't go to school, or don't want to go to school, or don't have, the right mindset to go to school, but they're really, really creative and talented and want to do something, and they just don't know where to start. I more than anything, maybe a detriment to myself, like, will always pick up the phone and answer it and not charge someone for the information that I'm giving them, right? And I think there should be more of that. Um, uh, I want artists to get paid. I have, again, one of the most difficult things to do is to ask people as a startup to, like, hey, can you do this for less? But when I was in the band and we were touring, like, I insisted that, anyone that we brought on, we had to pay them because their time is valuable, and especially, at the skill level that we were talking about, it's so important that artists are paid for their work. And so finding new and creative ways and old ways, that are beneficial to artists to get them paid more equitably is really, really important to me. And so less gatekeeping, just being a resource, getting artists paid, uh, and finding a way to create longevity for artists, so that, if you are, artists you can't just sit an artist down and tell them to create, 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 create forever, right? There are ebbs and flows. You go through ruts, you have writer's block, you go into depression, you are like, I am nothing, I can't ever create again. And then it's like, oh my God. And out of that came, like, this most incredible song, I'm ready to go again, kind of thing. Like, what I am trying to do with the label, and part of the thesis business plan that I did, was to create, part equity for artists, so that if you're with the label, and you're not creating, you still get paid out. So you have, like, part ownership while you're with us, kind of thing. And so if you're going through those ebbs and flows, or those ups and downs of creativity, and being able to perform or not being able to perform, or write, or whatever, you still have a steady source of income, kind of thing. And so creating that longevity, so, like, once you're done creating, you have some sort of, source of income that you can still depend on.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important, right? For folks to be able to be sustainable and continue
Hmm.
to do this. I mean, I hesitate to say work, right? Because it's art.
Yeah, it's funny, like, work is art. It takes a lot out of people. It's an incredibly, um uh energy inefficient process, right? Like, it takes so much. Like, you play a song and you're sweating at the end of it, right? Like, if you're performing live and you're putting your heart and soul, like, it is work. Like, you are doing it. If you're in the studio, if you're writing, like, mentally, you have to go through so many blocks in your brain, to get what's in there out onto paper. um of course you're going to be exhausted afterwards. Like, that takes a lot of effort. So yeah, it is work, and sometimes you want to work and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't.
Absolutely. Well, I have a two-parter question, but seeing as how you have two different major positions here, two different major jobs, it might be end up being a four-parter question. Um,
Cool.
but let's start with the first, which is what's the most challenging part of your job?
Yeah. The most challenging part, well, let's stay on the music side because that's well, what did I write? Because yeah. I was like, that was a good thing when I was looking at the question before. Um, uh, for me personally, especially in music, doing something the right way, right? Like the music business is so like you have to deal with copyright and you have to deal with legal and you have to deal with is that idea mine and how do I perform and like how do I get to the place where I can perform and all that kind of thing. So like for me, I'm always like, how are we going to do this the right way? I'm a very like step one, step two, step three, step four kind of person when it comes to that. Um, and the hardest part is, or the thing that the hardest part to understand for me was like, there is no right way to do it. You just have to do it. If you want to do music, you just have to do it. Um, Doing it the right way or fitting into the system of the music industry will come, but there is no right way to do anything. And so for me, that was the hardest thing to break my mind out of was like, just do it your own way. Your unique perspective is what made you sort of successful so far. Bring that into it, and so that's sort of the hardest thing and part of that is also like the gatekeeping part is like once you hit a level, how do you start doing it so that you can sustain yourself and get into those doors, and that's the right way, right? um but it's not the right way to do music is just to do it. And if you want to perform on the street. If you want to perform in a venue, you just perform in a venue, and you have to break through like that mental block to to get there. And that's the hardest. That was the hardest thing for me in that part of it. um the hardest part of my other job, managing a venue, or two venues actually, if you're really thinking about it, four venues, because there's a venue inside the venue at each of the buildings.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. uh I
So
work
is this a 16-parter question now?
right. No, it's actually a pretty easy answer. So I work for a school district that has these two massive world-class performing arts centers, and the hardest thing at that job is um, working through the bureaucracy of a public agency and translating the artistic needs of an institution like that with two different identities to a bureaucracy that is very used to a certain mindset. And that's not good or bad. That's not a complaint even. Like that's just the reality of the situation, is like the artistic needs of anybody are really hard to communicate and translate to someone who doesn't do it every day. Um, so that's the hardest part there.
Awesome. Well, then the second part being what's the most rewarding?
Yeah. So back to the music part of it. The music part of it for me is when I get whoever I'm working with to feel like they were successful. I was working with someone up in the Pacific Northwest, and I had been working with him on songwriting for years through the pandemic. Um, and then we finally were able to get together in a room and record. And then I took the sessions back with me down here and I mixed them. And he was like, "You took exactly what was in my head and brought it to life outside. Like exactly what I heard, you made it happen." And that was one of the highest compliments I've ever gotten from anybody, was like, being able to like carbon copy what's inside of an artist's head out into, a physical or digital product. So that's really, really rewarding. On the other side, um, in the venue management part of it, we're embedded in a high school, and part of the mission is training students to be the technicians, creatives, designers for the next generation. Um, and for me, being able to work with students in that in a professional setting, and sort of unlock their potential for being like little mini professionals when they leave, and not have to. I know we're on a college channel right now, but like not have to go to college and get a job straight out of high school, is something that's really cool to watch when they realize, like, oh, I can do this. I've unlocked this incredible potential when maybe someone else didn't believe in me, or I didn't know I could do it, kind of thing. Having said that, uh, I I have sent tons of kids to college out of this program. I'm very proud of that. But I've also sent a ton of kids right into the industry, which was really good for them as well. So it's really rewarding to watch the students do that, and be able to create programs and opportunities for them to grow into those fields.
Yeah. What I really like about, both aspects there, is kind of like that focus on relationships.
Hmm.
And I think that's pretty clear. It makes me want to ask about professional relationships, and specifically mentoring, right?
Hmm.
Like mentoring is such an important thing across many fields, but how important is mentorship in your job, and has been throughout your career path? And do you have any mentors, or
Hmm.
you know do you have, obviously I feel like the answer is yes, to do you have any mentees?
Yeah.
And what does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think mentorship is a funny thing, because I feel like people are like, mentors last forever. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, and they ebb and flow. I think the key is like meaningful relationships. Um, one of my first jobs in college, again, was working for Pacific Symphony. Um, I got that job through my high school band director, Dominic Mumolo, shout out. He's at I think he's at Cal State Fullerton now. No hate, no hate.
CSU family, we all love, all
Right,
love.
CSU family, that's right. Dominic's a great guy, and he was so instrumental to me in high school, and was such a great mentor, and held me accountable in high school when I was a terrible student, and was like, kept close touch with my parents and made sure that like I was studying and practicing and all that kind of stuff. Um, so he got me that job, and we used to stay in touch all the time, and now we sort of just follow each other on the socials and kind of like touch base years at a time will go past, but like, you can pick up a conversation, and I think that was a mentorship that turned into a meaningful relationship, kind of thing, right? Similarly, Glenn Crosby was a mentor of mine, played a really big part starting in high school. He was my drum instructor. And I mean, like the impact that he continues to have on my life, even though, again, like we don't talk super often. But you know, my love for drumming uh, was sort of solidified through his mentorship, and then like my expansion of what drumming is, and different genres of music, and understanding of different genres of music, and the importance of having a really, really wide view of music in general, and being a musician first as opposed to being just a drummer, right? um uh was it came from him. So that's two mentors or meaningful relationships that I had. And now, I don't have a mentor per se, but I like I've had the benefit of having really great bosses, and while I wouldn't necessarily call them mentors, they've been really good people, and so I've learned a lot from them. And I think for me now, like if someone came along that knew so much and could give me a lot more guidance and really, pave the way, and help me through that, I would totally take on another mentor. I would totally put myself in that position. But I think for me now, it's like I try to be really conscious and present to learn from people, um, who know a lot about anything. And so uh, I think for me now, the relationship is more give and take. Like I'll learn a lot from you, and hopefully you can learn a lot from me as well, right? And so that's where for me the meaningful relationship comes in, because there's a give and take, right? Like y- when there's mentorship, like they're pouring all of this knowledge into you, right? And you're just absorbing it. Um, and I think now I've grown to a part where it's like I like the exchange of ideas. I like the dialogue, the discourse, challenging each other's ideas and growing together as people in that sense. If that makes sense at all. And then in terms of mentees, again, like I've been at my big job for 10 years now, and I was an overhire where I worked closely with students. I was a stagecraft teacher for 5 years, and I was teaching kids and working closely with them on productions and in the classroom and in a wood shop and all that kind of thing. And so I've worked closely with students. I don't know if I was a mentor to them. Maybe some of them would consider me a mentor, but what I feel like I did is like I made myself available, right? Like to answer questions, to be a reference for jobs, to give them advice about what to do after high school. Should you go to college? Should you not go to college? So I've taught a lot of students. I've been a resource. So if that, but I've never had like, you're my mentee now, like, yeah, no, again, a resource, for sure. Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that, you know, it's kind of common, right? Like maybe those mentor-mentee relationships aren't necessarily spelled out exactly in
Yeah.
that way, but they exist and in
Hmm.
whatever form that is. So I think that's great. And I think that's great that you're able to make yourself available to folks. Um, but moving to the next one, I think that we always like to ask the hot button issues of the day. And I'm particularly interested in your answer, as someone in the music industry and even in the live event space, because it may have you might have to wear two different hats here, but you know, what role does AI play in your fields? And you know, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What do
Hmm.
you generally think of
I don't think it's going to be impactful at all. No, I'm kidding.
My fresh take.
Right. Ignore it completely. No, AI, like anything that new that comes along, is people are going to be afraid of it. They're going to create restrictive policies around it, and try to control it and maybe legislate against it. Or just my general sense when it first, like when ChatGPT first kind of came on the scene, especially in a school setting, everyone was freaking out and they were terrified of it, and they put up firewalls, and they were like, the students are writing essays with it. And I was talking to artist friends, and they're like, because I've got friends in film too, and they're like, they're going to be writing the scripts for us and like all of this stuff. And I think there's an element of truth to all of that. And, you know, many things can be true, right? Um, the thing about AI is that it is simply a tool. And just like any tool, you can wield it to do good, you can wield it to do bad, you can use it to make your life easier. If you don't know how to use it, it's going to make your life a lot harder. If you don't respect the tool, it can get you into some hot situations that are difficult to get out of. But I think overall, it's a good thing. I mean, when we talk in the music industry, uh, you can use it as a starting point, right? If you're songwriting, like use it as a framework, talk to it like you would talk to a person. I've got a weird thing in my brain where it's like I'm always nice to Chat GPT. I'm like, hey, Chat GPT, could you give me, an outline for or what are the chords for this song and how could I jazz it up kind of thing. And I always say thank you for some weird reason, right? Because it's like the more that you treat it like a person, maybe the more collaborative it'll feel, right? But you always, you want to make sure that you're checking against it and you're not just saying like write me the song and then crediting yourself with it, right? Because that doesn't help you do anything. It doesn't help you be a better songwriter. It just, you're coattail riding sort of like on a thing that's arguably stealing other information and then you're passing it off as your own. But I think we've used it for marketing, right? We've used it to create touring templates for budgets and routing and um, uh, conversation starters. We write captions with it for social media. Gosh, what did I use it for? I mean, again, like I was like, what are the chords for the song? And it like brought me up the chords for the song, so that I could reference those. It helps you rewrite things, right? Like if you're writing something, you're like, I like letters of rec. If you're like, I need to write, I need the start of a letter of rec, it'll give you the start for a letter of rec, and then that might kickstart your brain, and then you can kind of take it from there. Um, Overall, I think it's a good thing. I don't think it's, maybe this will bite me in the butt down the line, a couple of years. I was like, I don't think it's going to supplant any of us, the creative community. There's so much value in what humans bring. There's an intangible, I think. Um, and so while people might use it to to start a process or to embellish a process, and people will use artificial intelligence to create things from scratch and pass it off of their own. But I think the biggest thing is that the authenticity of an artist will always shine through, and if it's not there, then it's going to fall flat anyway. So like again, use it as a tool sort of thing. Um, yeah, that's my hot take on AI.
Nice.
It's a tool. It's a tool. Use it for
So,
good and give credit where credit is due. Don't be afraid of it. Jump right in.
well, as we are nearing the end of our chat, there's a question I always like to ask folks, which is, if you could go back in time and tell yourself one piece of advice, go back in time to when you were just leaving CSULB and just give yourself one message or one piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a great question. What's so funny is that like as hard as it has been sometimes, I don't think I have any regrets about my road, right? Um, uh, you're like whatever you want to do, do it. If you think that you want to get into music and you don't know how to do it, just start hanging out with musicians. Knock on a knock on a door to a label and sort masters for them. I don't know, like find anything that you want to do and just pave the way for yourself. Go through the doors that are open for you. Like I've said yes so many times, you know, and maybe there was an unwarranted confidence that led me through, like, you know, if someone asks you if you can do something, say yes, because I really honestly think that, like, if you put your mind to something, you can do just about anything. I don't think there's so, you know, maybe rocket science or brain surgery, like, don't say yes to, you know,
Maybe not
without
that.
going through the proper courses, right? But like there's so much potential for everybody, especially when you're younger, right? But even now, like, I'm 39, I'm starting, you know, I'm 2 or 3 years into this label, and I'm still saying yes to opportunities, you know, because I know that that will take me to where I want to be. Um, so say yes, walk through the door. You can do anything that you put your mind to. It doesn't matter what your grades look like. Don't look up my records. Um, uh, 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 like, if you're motivated to do it, you should absolutely do it. And if you want to do it, 100% do it. So that's my advice, is just say yes and walk through the door.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for your time. I think that this has been just a great chat. For those of you who joined us, thank you so much. I encourage you to, again, view this at on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni, and share it to everyone you've met and everyone you think would get something good out of this, because I know there's a lot of good here. And also feel free to follow us on social media. We're at CSULB Alumni on all platforms. And make sure that you stay in touch with us and that you don't miss the next industry chat. And Adrian, if folks wanted to maybe keep in touch with you, or connect, ask you a question, or keep the conversation going, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at ATNoack. That's ATNOACK. Or you can shoot me an email. It's Adrian, ADRIAN, at midnightechorecords.com. You know, check us out. There's not a whole lot out there right now. But midnightechorecords.com, you can take a look at that and shoot us an email, send us a message.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Adrian, and thank you all for joining us today. Until next time, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.